Good morning and welcome to the first virtual PowerSchool user group for the 14-15 school year. We're really happy to see that we have more than 60 people joining our call today, and we even have a greater number that has registered, which is a really fantastic way for us to know who's coming on board, and in the next couple of minutes I'm sure we'll get even a greater number of attendees. So thanks for registering and listening to us this morning. This users group is hosted by the PowerSchool Solutions, a consortium which consists of Capital Area IU, Carbon-Lehigh IU, and Montgomery County IU. And today we have each of these IUs represented on the call. You're listening to me, Linda Beeler, Technology Support Specialist at Montgomery County IU. We have Dave, Cheryl, and John all on the call, and if possible, maybe take the mic for a minute to say good morning and introduce yourself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Mall. I'm from the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit.
Hi, good morning. This is Cheryl Peters. I'm from Carbon-Lehigh IU21. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you'll get a lot of good information this morning.
And good morning, this is Dave Nichols from the Capital Area Intermediate Unit.
All right, great. And thanks to Dave Nichols for producing this morning. He's at the controls here for our sound and WebEx. In the future, if you need to contact PowerSchool Solutions, that address is available on the screen at https://pssolutions.org, or now you can follow us on Twitter at PowerSchool Solutions, or it's PowerSchool SOLN. So again, that's on your screen if you want to jot that down. It's another way to follow us in our activities. Next we have state reporting updates presented by Chris Wilkinson, our Senior Product Manager, Regulatory Compliance. And I believe Chris is on the call and is ready to talk to us about all the many changes that have been occurring due to PIMS. So I'm going to throw the presentation over to Chris now.
Okay, so we have had a lot of changes, and I don't have a PowerPoint necessarily. What I'm going to do is just review with all of the customers, users on the call here, the changes that we've most recently made. We had a release on the 12th of September and then also the 19th of September. As you all know, towards the end of August, the state did come out with the new requirements for state reporting, and those requirements, according to your calendar, they're fast approaching. The submission deadlines are fast approaching. The first one that we felt like, obviously we felt like we needed to work on the reports that were due first, the first submissions that were due. And the two most important ones were the school enrollment and the student snapshot template. So the first thing that the state did announce was a change to exit codes. However, the thing that made this kind of complicated or complex is they changed the exit codes for the school enrollment template, but your exit codes for the for anything that's child accounting reporting, those have not changed. So you don't want to go into PowerSchool and change any of your exit codes. You would never want to do that anyway. You wouldn't want to go and delete an exit code that's already there because that might be historically attached to a student or something. So you don't want to do any of that. So, but we needed a way for you to be able to map your current exit codes and entry codes to the new entry codes and exit codes. And not only that, we also needed you to be able to have a way to, and I'm going to say eventually, override it at the student level. And we'll get back to my use of eventually here in a second. So So there's a way to mass assign your entry codes and your exit codes, and I'm going to show you that right now. So in district setup, if you've gotten these updates, you will see this. You will see this information, these changes in PowerSchool. You have to have gotten the 12th and the 19th to see these changes. And the 19th, obviously, that just came out Friday, and I know many of you maybe haven't updated to that yet already. So I'm going to show you the entry codes and exit codes, what we call mapping. And so if we come, I'm going to go to exit codes first because that one was a little bit more confusing based on the information that the state did give us. So the state did provide a mapping documentation that was the mapping, and let me show you really quick that too. Hang on one second. I'm not finding that document right now. If anybody hasn't seen that, just let Cheryl know. I sent a copy of it to the focus group, so she should be able to share that, or Linda, with any of you that don't have that. But what they did was they went through and they mapped most of your codes. The one that was the most confusing was W4, which I don't have here on my test server, but if you can imagine, W4 got mapped twice to, and there's an explanation on the page about that, to WD01 and WD02. So basically what you need to do is come here, select your exit codes, and then choose which code you want it to be mapped to for the school enrollment template. And I think that the W4 one is possibly the most confusing, whether to map it to W1 or W2, because it could apply to either one of these. So what you have to decide is which one fits your school in regards to, if you were thinking the general population. Because at this level right here, you're just mapping it for everyone. So what you need to do is come in here to your exit codes and go ahead and map each of your exit codes to a school enrollment a school enrollment exit code. And you can see here I'm doing that. Once I think the way that it is designed is that once you have mapped a code, it looks like you can map it more than once. Anyway, you go through here and you do your mapping. And that will apply to all of the students, and the code that you mapped is the code that will be extracted on the school enrollment template. You have to also do the same thing in entry codes, even though at this time there is only one school enrollment entry code. Instead of just having the report default to making every single student the same entry code for the school enrollment, we went ahead and we're requiring you to map this, and that's because we did have an indication that there might be additional changes in the future. So we're prepared for those additional changes. So if you don't do the mapping, then at the student level, you're not going to see these values. And I'm going to show you the student level here in a second. So pretty simple. Just go in there and analyze and think about your general population and how you want that to be mapped. For the entry code, it's just the same. It doesn't matter. You just need to go to all your entry codes and do it. Okay, so then what we're going to do is I'm going to switch here to district. At the district, or at the school level, I'm just going to choose a student. And I'm going to show you what it looks like to override it for an individual student. Now what I want to let you know is that right now the report is not looking at these fields, even though we have added them to the page. It will in the future. This is a report that you have to submit quite often, about every month, or more often if you want. But right now we could not, the code is somewhat complex to get written into the report, and we just basically ran out of time. So the fields are here, and you can use those, and I know that some of the focus group members said they are using these, and you can export them out so that you can see which students you did override, and then after you run your template, you can go into the template and make the changes before you submit it to the state. Okay? So you can see the field right here, school enrollment template entry override and school enrollment template exit code override. And both of these fields, because they are new, they are in a student table, extension table, and also a re-enrollment extension table. So right here, I mapped only this E1, so I can do that. I mean, it's for everybody anyway, so you wouldn't need to override for the student, but for future use for the entry code. For exit code, you can see the ones that I've mapped, so those can be my selections. Okay? And as I mentioned, right now the report is not coded to look at these fields yet. You will have, if you have a student that has a different exit code than what you assign to the general population, then you will need to fix your template at this time for that. We're working on getting that fixed as quickly as we possibly can. It has to do with the fact that the report is written in reporting engine format, and so we're actually considering rewriting it in what we call the state reporting platform format, and I'll also cover that in a few minutes. So that's the entry code, exit code changes. Now, we also made some changes at the student level to the student template tab under state, province, Pennsylvania. So now if you come here to the student template tab, you will see quite a few changes. One of the changes that we did was we added the field number to the label. This is getting to be a pretty long list, and they added quite a few. They did make quite a few changes to the student template, so I thought it would be helpful for everyone to see these field numbers here. Some of these fields were actually added to the student enrollment pages. You can see anything that's a blue link, the actual data entry point for this is on the student enrollment pages, and if I was to click this link, it would take me back to the current student enrollment for the student. So that's what would be displayed on this page if you had something selected. So there's the special education referral, the funding district code. The funding district code, the information for that field, the pop-up menu, that information is coming from district of residence. We also had, we already had an issue about that. Someone wasn't getting, the values were not showing up in the pop-up menu, and what they discovered is that they had symbols in the names of their districts. So don't include any symbols in the names of your districts, okay? I see that somebody's got their hand raised, so yes, we can pause for that. There must be a question, and I probably should stop. This is a lot of information, so we'll stop after each new thing and let people raise their hands and make comments. So,
Go ahead, Tiffany.
I noticed that the district of enrollment code on the student template state page is blank, and I have it filled in on the transfer info page.
this one right here, district of enrollment code,
Yes,
it's not displaying over here. Is that what you're saying?
correct.
Okay, are you sure you don't have the funding district code populated over on the
Positive, because I just checked.
Okay, all right. Can you just create a case for that so that I can check into it?
Sure.
Okay. I'll make a note of it. Because I don't think this one is showing up in two places, the district, this new field 217, District of Enrollment Code, but I need to check on that. I know this one is, you fill this one out on the enrollment pages. And then there was special education referral. I really actually have to be honest with you, there's been so many changes. I don't have, it's in the release notes, all the changes that were, the new fields and everything that were added. Obviously the assessment fields, which we're going to talk about here in a second. So you'll notice this one here, the assessment participation code. This one's been deprecated. It was field number 202. It's still called the same thing. It's now a different field number. And we have a new assessment page that we've added it to. And it has a new field name. This had the new field, which has the same label and the same requirements basically, had completely different values. So that's why we just are leaving this on the page, but we deprecated. It's no longer going to be used. If you had value in it, the value should be showing up here, but you will not be using it on this page.
Chris, this is just Cheryl. I just want to there's a couple questions in about the assessments, and I'm trying to answer them, but I'm going to wait until after you go over that page and some of the changes and stuff. And
okay.
If these questions aren't answered at that time, then I'll go over those questions. I just wanted to let the attendees know I'm going to, I know you're going to go into it in more detail, so hopefully that'll be fine. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So they did release the new requirements in the student template in regards to assessments. We felt like it needed its own page. You needed a place where you could actually come and come into PowerSchool. You could see a student's current schedule. This is based on the term that you're at the top of the page or the year that you click on here. I do believe that it is showing third grade and up, their schedules. For third grade, it doesn't really matter, but there is a value that you do need to populate on this page for your lower grades. So the idea is that you would come here, you would look at the student, you'd say, oh, taking journalism, and I don't know, what the rules are or anything like that. I'm just using this as an example. But then you would click on the year, and you would determine which assessment they're taking. And there's the assessment participation code, which is here in the drop-down. And then there's the field 214, 215, and 216 where you designate the assessment that they're taking. And what we've done is when you look at the requirements in the PIMS manual, there's a different code value for the different combinations of the assessments. So we're not making you select all of those because what the report will do is it will say, oh, it's an algebra, and report that code. And I put all of that information in the release notes that went out on Friday. And then if you chose algebra and literature, it would report the code that's required for the combination of those two. Or if you chose algebra, literature, and biology, it would report the code that's required for all three of those. I think it is for high school students, this I is what you're going to choose for those students. And then there's also, I think it's a Z value, that if you don't select any, the report is supposed to automatically be calculating that, but I just heard this morning that I don't know if the report is doing that, so I need to check on that for sure. So if they're not taking any assessments, there's also a value for that. For your lower grade students, there's these other values that you're going to choose or other options for other kinds of testing that might be happening. You have to, it's required that 212 be populated for every single student. So if I go back here, well, and then you just go to the page and you click submit. If I go back here, if I click on a different year, for example, 2012-13, then I'm going to see the schedule for 2012-13. This student doesn't have a schedule for that. So for each year that you click on, you will see a schedule for each of those years. There is a way to mass populate this, and I reviewed that with the focus group last week. I have provided a template on PowerSource, and the release notes do mention that. You're going to be using Database Manager, and I'll briefly go over that, explaining to everyone how that works. I know everyone in the past is used to importing in their student fields, you know, with quick import or DDA or DDE, all those different ways that we got our data into PowerSchool. And now with database extensions, it's kind of different, and you're going to use what we call Data Manager. So let's just stop for a second, and any questions about assessments?
This is Cheryl. I'm just going to look at a couple. I know there's several questions about the importing and mass updating, so I'm going to let you cover those. But somebody had a question about who was responsible for filling in the assessment data, and that's a district decision. Each district has to decide how that data is going to get populated. I think everything else is basically the mass changing of the items. And yes. Chris, I know you're going to go over it, but if you wouldn't mind mentioning at some point during your presentation about the version of PowerSchool that you should be on in order to be able to record this data. I know that there's a version for state reporting, but I know in the focus group we talked about features that aren't available and lower versions. Then, you know, if you're in 7. whatever, there are some versions in 8.0 plus that aren't available there. So, you know, if you could make those recommendations, that I think that would be helpful to the group as well.
Okay. So we're going to talk now about a little bit about data import and data export manager, and how once the whole database extension project was announced, we were informed, compliance was informed, that when we had to add a new field to PowerSchool, it had to be using database extension functionality. So no more are there going to be fields just added to, say, for example, a student page, and then you just import that in, and what we refer that to as clobbing into PowerSchool. It didn't have a column, and so I'm going to show you that first. For those of you who have not really done very much with database extensions, I'm going to show you first when I refer to clobbing, what I'm talking about. So if we're in DDA and we're in the students table and we just look at one student, hopefully I've got a student that has some custom filled data attached to them, and I think I do. You'll see here, in fact, I've got more than one state here. I've got New York field for them. You'll see here this custom and all these fields. These are custom fields. Some are core and some are state reporting fields. Before database extensions, when a new field was added by compliance, then you simply imported into PowerSchool and it ended up here under custom. And we refer to that as being clobbed into PowerSchool. It doesn't have a column. As you can see, this field has a column, and a column is, you know, here's the field name and here's the space to put the data into. That's referred to as a column. Now with database extensions, every single field will have its own column, and eventually all of these, when we start migrating all of the custom fields over to database extensions, nothing will show up under here under custom. Even your own custom fields will eventually have to be migrated over to the database extension functionality and will no longer be clogged. And each of your own fields will have their own column. The good thing about that is there will no longer be the use of virtual tables. Eventually we won't have virtual tables in PowerSchool, and we will use database extension for instead of virtual tables when needed. And when you, as you know now, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to export data out of a virtual table, but it doesn't come out very clean because of the functionality of virtual tables. Now with database extensions, when you export out of a child table, which is equivalent to a virtual table, that data comes out very clean, all in rows and columns, and as you expect it to come out. So basically, the difference is now what you're going to do is you're going to go to Page and Data Management. There's two places to get to that. You can click on Special Functions and go to Importing or Exporting, or you can click on System and then go to Page and Data Management. And once you're at Page and Data Management, you'll see where you have Data Import Manager and Data Export Manager. I'm going to show you Data Export Manager first, and then I'm going to show you the template and how to mass update this data. Okay? So if we go to Data Export Manager, from the drop down, you will see all of the tables that have been added to database extensions. The C in front of a table name represents core, and there are a few tables here that don't have anything in front of them, and that was before this naming convention evolved, and those will be also core custom tables. Okay, so if there's a C in front of it, that's a core custom table. If there's an S in front of it, as in state reporting, it's a state reporting custom table. And the rest of the way how this works is an X at the end of the table name stands for extension table. A C at the end of the table name stands for a child table, and an S stands for standalone. And for those of you, if I'm repeating myself because I know I've talked about database extensions, I just can't remember if I've talked to this group before. There's a reason why a developer will decide to either do an extension table, a child table, or a standalone table. When you have just what we call one-to-one data, you're going to use an extension table. And you can have as many extension tables as you want, but probably most often you'll just see one extension table. So when you think about all of your custom student fields right now, they'll probably end up all in this student extension table. There might be sometimes an occasion when we think we have a lot of data that we might create an additional extension table for the student fields. So in that case, it might say something like PA underscore STU underscore SPED underscore X or something like that. So when it's one-to-one, when it's just student data on a student page, that's when we would use an extension table. When we would use a child table is when we have a one-to-many kind of relationship. So for our assessment data, we have a one-to-many because each year the student has data. So it's like anytime you think about when you go to a page and you click on new and you create a record and then you click on new again and you create another record, that's a one-to-many type of scenario. And that is when we decide that we're going to use a child table. When we decide we're going to use a standalone table, this is just data that doesn't really, there's not really any place, any table already residing in PowerSchool that we could hook it on to. So we just make a child table. And this Title I child table is, or standalone table is a table that holds fields. I do believe it's for the Title I survey questions that we have in PowerSchool. There's a page to answer the survey portion of Title I. So we're just going to choose this student assessments underscore C so that we can see all of the fields that are in the table. And some of this functionality was not released until PowerSchool Core version 8. So before 8 was released, database extensions had started, that functionality had been released before 8. But the only thing that you got you could just come here to this table and you could only export out just the fields in that table only. Now what they've done is they've also let you choose fields from the parent table of that child table. So if you can see here, here's our assessment fields and the student DCID. And this is the primary key in database extensions. It always wants the student's DCID. We're used to student underscore number or student ID. Now in database extensions, it's the student's DCID. And here are all these fields that we've added, obviously, to that table. Now, if I wanted to export out, let's just say I wanted to export out all my students that have Keystone Spring Algebra and their student DCID, because I might be wanting to update that or whatever, but I also want a little bit more information. I can scroll down here from the students table and choose their name, like last first or first name, whatever. I can choose whatever I want from the student table to be exported out. Okay? And that's really helpful because really up here, the DCID, that's not going to give me much information. So if you're not on version 8 plus, you're not going to get this feature right here where you can get anything from the students table, the parent table. And I think that that was a big improvement, and it's very, very helpful to have that. Okay, so that's just coming here to Data Export Manager, showing you, you know, this is the place where you can always come and look and see the tables. For extension table information, you can see the fields for that in the regular parent field in DDA. You're not going to see it necessarily in the drop-down, the table, but you're going to see the field names. So if I choose this, all of these field names are going to show up in DDA in the re-enrollment table. And they'll look like this. They'll actually have the table name in front of it along with the field name behind it. So child tables, managing that data, definitely have to come to Data Export Manager. I think eventually everything, you'll be using this for everything. So we all just have to kind of start getting used to using Data Manager. So to import into the assessment data, you're going to need to have your student's DCID. So what I recommend that you do is that you make your current selection in PowerSchool, and all the directions for this are on the template and in the release notes for this demonstration that I'm going to give you about using Data Export and Data Import Manager. Okay? So my suggestion would be that, okay, what's the best way for me to get my current students in selection? You might just know who's taking the algebra assessment, and you might just be able to select those students by hand. You know they're taking it for Winter Keystone, and you're going to go get those students, and then you're going to export them out with their DCID. So, but one of the things that I thought of that you could do is you could go to a section. So I'm going to go to sections. And I'm going to go to this Algebra 2 sections. Let's see if sometimes test servers can be very interesting. I've already used algebra, so I don't want to use it. Let me use a different one. And I've used biology, so let me find like an English one or something here. Let's just see if there's some sections here. So here I am at Technical English. Let's just say that counts towards literature. It probably doesn't, but anyway. And I just happen to know that all of these students are going to be taking that assessment. This is a year-long class. They're going to take the spring assessment. Also for you, I'm sure you know how you could, select from here also and just pick certain students out of the list or leave some of them out of it. It's just a really faster way to make your current selection. For me anyway, it probably would be. So I'm just going to make all of these students in my current selection. And then I'm going to go to DDE. and I'm going to export these students out. So they're in my selection in the student table. I'm going to click on Export Records, and I'm going to export out their name, and then down here is this checkbox, Export DCID. And I'm just going to, I'm going to get all that on a spreadsheet, because that's going to be the base of the beginning of the template that I'm going to use to import in the assessment data. Okay, so I'm going to show you on PowerSource where the template is. I'm just move this away. I don't know if you can see both of my screens, but we're going to go in here to PowerSource. And when you go to your state reporting page where the release notes are, the templates are all in a folder under other documentation. So if you come here under other state reporting documentation, you will see this template, student assessment import template. So I'm just going to open this up. And there's directions here on the page as well. And so here's the template. And as I mentioned, there's directions here, you know, in this box of obviously if you were going to use this template itself, then you would want to get rid of this, all this extra information here. Basically what we did was we just went through and we identified every single field, which ones were optional, which ones were required. And you can see here, this one, you know, if you're not importing in spring algebra, then you don't need to populate that. So one of the things that is required is the student's DCID. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take that field and paste it in to my spreadsheet that has the student's DCID. If I can copy and paste today, right? So last first I can leave on here because that's just helpful for me, and it won't map, and you don't need to worry about that. It doesn't mess up the import or anything. And then you just go through here and you decide, you know, for these students, what do you need to update for assessments for them. I think we said that these students were going to be taking the Keystone Spring Literature. So I'm going to populate that. I'm going to put that field in here. Now you can do it the other way too. You could have copied and pasted this DCID information into the template that I've provided. It's totally up to you how you want to do this. Okay. There's a couple more fields on this template that are required, so I'm just going to scroll over to those. And that would be the participation code and the year ID. Those are required. So now I have my template completed. For the literature, for any of the assessments, it's a checkbox, and so I just need the number 1 to be populated for these students. And then the participation code for these or high school students is going to be an I. They're taking the Keystone. They're not taking any of those others. So if you were doing something for, let's say, for example, all your I think it's first and second graders, you would do one of these codes instead. I think it's the PSSA. So you would do a B. So it's just the code. It's not the word or anything like that. Just the code that you need. And then the year ID, I'm going to do 23 because right now I have 2013-14. That's the year that I'm working with. So now I'm ready to go. I've got my DCID, I've got all my data here. I can save this just like in the past, the way that you're used to saving. I'm just going to call this PA test import assessment data. So that's how you're going to prepare your data. Then what you're going to do is, I'm going to close this one, is you're going to come to Data Import Manager. So again, System, Page and Data Management. And now this time we're going to go to Data Import Manager. Browse for your folder. And I called this PA Test Import. Import it into the Student Assessment Child table. Click on Next. And you can see it's mapped. Click on Next. And you can see where you have these options. If if it sees something on the file, do you want to import it or not? Update it, import, whatever. And then click on Import. And I've noticed that sometimes you have to click on refresh. It's because it's thinking. It looks like I've got 3 errors here, and I'm going to explain that to you here in a second. And then it's inserted everything else. And you can download the failed records. Okay, so why did I get this unknown error? Well, something that we discovered after I met with the focus group and after the release on the 19th is that if the student already has data, so I'm going to go back here. I'm going to go back to Data Import Manager. We're just going to go through this process, and I'm going to get to the place where where I want to show you something that we discovered after testing. So normally, I would have to say that in compliance, we do not do testing of importing your data. But because this is all new functionality, and I knew that I was going to be asked the question, how do we get this data populated quickly? That's why I developed a template, and I'm doing this demo on how to use Data Import Manager. In the future, like let's just say a year from now, probably not going to go that far. You will all become more familiar with using this process, be able to make your own templates and everything. But right now, as we're all getting used to it, we do some testing of it. And after we spoke with the focus group, I would say everybody on my team went back to their test servers and did some testing. And one of the things that we wanted to figure out is what was this looking at? If a record in the import file matches an existing record in the database, how would you like that record processed? Well, the exact match also includes the record ID. So if we go back to my import template, you will see that this field right here is optional. It's the assessment ID. So every time you import data into PowerSchool, into database management, to that system, there is an ID for each record that's in there. And to update records, you need the ID of the record. So let's just say you were going to do an update of your assessments for students that already had been populated. You would want to export out this ID in order to be able to update that information. So what we discovered is that this right here, this statement wants the ID. And if you don't have the ID on your spreadsheet of a student that already has a record, then it's going to import it in and you're going to have multiple records. Because it's not looking at student DCID, it's looking, an exact match is the ID. Now we have reported this to CORE and they are looking into it as a bug on their part, something that this should look at the DCID. In the meantime, we can add a constraint to the table, which on my test server they've done. And that is why I got errors, because 3 of the students on my spreadsheet, even though I thought that none of them had records, 3 of these students did have records, and because of the constraint that the developer added onto the table, their data did not get imported in. Now, that will not be released until this Friday, that constraint piece that we added, which will keep you from adding multiple records. We don't want that to happen. So that's where that error was coming from. 3 of these students already have data. Somebody's gone in there, maybe myself probably as my test server, and played around, and I added something to somebody. So
Chris, is there a way to mass delete if somebody's got mass duplicate records? That question has been asked.
Yes, and there isn't right now, and that also was brought to the attention of CORE, because I know that in DDA you can do that. And so what I would like to also recommend to all of you is that you all create cases for that. Those would be a core, that would become a core case, that you don't have a way to delete records. Now, we are also adding to the page, and if you take the update on the 26th, you'll see delete buttons next to each record. So that is going to be, there won't be a mass way to delete, there will only be a individual, if you have duplicate records, an individual way to delete those records. On the page there'll be a delete button.
Okay.
Now, so what I'm recommending is one more step to this, and I haven't added it to any of the documentation because I knew that we were going to come out with this fix on the 26th. There'll be a constraint starting on the 26th. You will not be able to do update by accident and multiple records, because you will get that error. The problem is the error is kind of interesting. It doesn't really tell you what it was. It just says unknown error. So we're trying to work with CORE to get that fixed as well, so that it gives you an error of what exactly did happen. What I recommend that you do before you import in is you go to Data Export Manager and you export out all the data. And you compare that data to what you're importing in. I mean, you don't know, you might have testing coordinators that are trying to help you out, and they're just out there populating the page one by one, and then they come to you and say, hey, this is taking me forever, can you just mass update it, or whatever. So what I would do right now, until we get the update out on the 26th, I would export data out of those tables, out of that table first, before you import into it, just to check to see if you have any data, because there is a chance that you could get multiple records. Once the release comes out on the 26th, that will not happen. You will get the error that you saw that I got. Okay? So if we go back to the start page and check some of my students that we can see how that worked. My data worked. You can see he's got a I, not participating, and a Y under literature here. And I can just randomly check this data on, different students to see if it worked. Okay, so that's the way that you can mass update it. And what there'll be here is when you click on this record, there's going to be a delete button. I think that I did see a screenshot from the developer on this, and I think what she's done is just added a delete here and a confirm so that you can delete these records. Okay? Okay, I don't really see the question, so I guess I'm just going to open it up. There's probably a lot of questions about this.
This is Cheryl. I see the questions. I'm not sure if anyone else does, so I'm going to just mention someone is asking about should they wait until Friday to do the mass update. And I think you answered that question, but in my opinion, I would not wait till Friday due to the fact that I believe, and I know you know, Chris, that the template is due by the 29th at 11 p.m. or something like that, isn't it?
That's right. That's right.
So that's the deadline. So depending, I guess, on how much updating you have to do, if you wait until Friday, typically the update doesn't come out until 5 p.m. Eastern Pacific time, which is 8 o'clock our time. So you're not going to get the update till Monday, maybe, or over the weekend, and then you'll have to do all your updating on Monday the 29th. So probably not a good idea, depending on how much updating you have to do. if you don't want to do, if you don't have very many students and you have somebody that can update your individual records one by one, and then to do that. But I think Chris's suggestion about exporting the data first is probably going to help you prevent that.
Yeah, I wouldn't wait till Friday. I would go ahead and start working on this now. I imagine that all of you have a lot of
right, because there was a data quality network meeting on Wednesday where they kind of explained the whole process. So technically it's supposed to shut down at 11:59 on Monday the 29th. But however, if people are still uploading their data at that time, they're not going to shut down until everything is uploaded. PIMS is going to have to shut down after all of that uploading is done in order to take their internal snapshot. So during that process, PIMS won't be available. So it'll be back up then in order to begin your October 1st snapshot, or whenever that window opens. After she said, and I don't remember her name, whoever was speaking on that conference call, that the worst case scenario she thought would be 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, that it would be back up. So it's just unfortunate that the state came out with these requirements so late. Not only Pearson's under the gun to come up with a way for you to populate this data, all the other SIS vendors are out there trying to come up with a way, and I understand that this is whole data manager import and export is new to most of everyone. Some of you are on the call or on the focus group, so you understand this or have seen this before. We did cover it slightly with the when we did the PVOS reporting, Chris, I think, right?
Yeah.
So some of that was covered a little bit there. So some of you might be a little bit familiar from that. Someone asked to have you show where that article on power source is located again. I don't know if we need to say by a show of hands. If you want Chris to go over this data import manager again. There were a couple comments that said, it's pretty fast, going over it pretty fast. So,
okay.
And I don't want to speak for everyone, so I don't know if there's maybe we need to just again say a show of hands or just kind of go over it again. Maybe that would be a good idea.
Okay. So I'm going to show you where it's at on PowerSource, and in the release notes it also gives you the path to where it is on PowerSource. There's a lot in the release notes. And I haven't been able to update the guides yet. I'm working on, there's a lot to update in the guides right now because of all the new requirements and everything that we've been releasing. So one thing that does get updated almost every single time, I don't think we're behind on that, is the data dictionary. And I'll show you that too, because that's actually going to become something that you become more, probably as far as guide information and stuff, more dependent on eventually than our other guides, I would say. So you're just going to go into support, documentation, excuse me, hang on. Support, documentation, state reporting, and then you probably will only just see one state. And then down here under other state reporting documentation. And there's other templates in here too. There's last year's calendar. I kind of revamped last year's calendar and put it in here, so that's what that is. And then there's the special education snapshot. And you know what, before I forget, I recently updated this. There was a lot of questions about this. And there's directions on importing your data into the special programs page. So that's that template. And then the student assessment import template right here. When I click on that, I also get the directions again. I will add on here note, you know, for the next couple of days, I'll put attention, export first before importing in, just so that everybody remembers to do that. Okay. And then here's the template. Okay, so that's where it's at. That's where any templates that I make in the future for any of this work that we're doing, one of the good things to also bring to your attention is that if you mouse over these fields, we added this kind of really neat, I think, function to PowerSchool a while back, so that when you mouse over a field, you get the table and the field name of where that field is. And now with database extensions, that's really helpful because you can see that these new fields are in a child table. Immediately you know I got to use database extension to get the data into that field. So if we come back over here to the student template, when I mouse over some of these fields, I can see, you know, it's just the regular. See if I can get it to work. Oh, maybe it's not on here. Hang on. Oh, I don't know what's happened here on this page. I'm not seeing them. If you see, it's supposed to be on any state page, so I'm going to have to check. Oh, here's this one is showing up. I think it's just where I'm mousing over. This one, and I don't know if you're seeing that when I mouse over, if you're seeing the little pop-up, but you can see that this one's in the students table, PA_ foreign exchange. But then if I go down to this new field that we added, District of Enrollment Code, you can see that it's in a student extension table, and the field name is actually called Enrollment District Code. So also pay attention pretty much whenever we add fields to a page, we're going to be updating what we call the data dictionary. And that is going to be under your state reporting guides. I don't like to get behind on this one at all. Sometimes we're scrambling to get it in there, but right here is the data dictionary. And this is going to become another one of your PowerSchool Bibles, I'm sure. And as you can see here, it lists all the tables and all the fields in each of the tables. So it's, you know, I would definitely start going out and getting this and downloading it so that you have it as a reference. It will tell you, you know, this table is a child table for the schools table containing information specifically about Title I programs. This table may contain multiple school year data for each reference school. So if you go through here in this data dictionary, again, very important, you know, information. Okay. So I don't know, did people want us to go over the import again?
Chris, this is Cheryl. What I'm going to just mention, we can look to see if anybody else is raising their hands, but somebody asked a question about the Act 16 report, and I know that was discussed in the focus group.
Yeah.
And I did reply back that it won't be available for the data submission. I mean, it's going to be created at some point, but because it was asking for 13-14 data and the data wasn't populated in PowerSchool, it kind of got put down on the lower priority because of the assessment and this other changes due on the student template. So I don't know if there's any other comments you want to make about that, but that may be a question that a lot of people had about the Act 16.
So if you look at the calendar and you look at the collection one for October 1 and you look at what they're collecting for 13-14, so in other words, data from the year before, this is somewhat new for, I think the first time they started doing, PIM started doing this was last year. First of all, we didn't know about the Special Education Act 16 report until August of this year, of, you know, going into 14-15 school year. So like Cheryl said, I mean, we just looked at what is due for 14-15 by October 1st and concentrated on that first. So we don't have the Special Education Act 16 data entry fields even in PowerSchool. We will be adding them in preparation for 14-15. Because I'm assuming that they'll want that data for 14-15 and that you'll need time to get that all populated for the students. And that information will be on the in special programs the same place where you fill out the data for the other special ed data that you do for the special education, special education report that you do. And we will be providing the report. We just were not able to do that at this time. So I hope that answers everybody's question about that.
Somebody had a question, and I don't know if this is a question for the group or not, but it sounds like a PIMS question. So it says, do all subjects and assessments have to be included in one upload, or can we grab a section of fall algebra, do the upload, then grab a section of fall literature, do the upload, even though some of the kids may be on both lists?
Yes, yes.
No, I'm talking, is PIMS going to allow that? I mean, I know in PowerSchool you can do that. That's not a problem, but I don't know. Is that okay with PIMS to do that, to upload? You're going to be uploading a lot of templates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know if anyone on the call has that answer to that question, but that was someone.
It looks like to me, too, that this first internal snapshot is all about the pre-code, for Winter Keystone. So I would just, if I was everyone, I would concentrate on Winter Keystone.
Right.
And I wouldn't really worry about everything else right now. I would concentrate on getting your pre-code, Winter Keystone stuff done.
Except they have to make sure that new field is populated with a value, even if it is only I.
That's right.
And Laura, in answer to your question then, Chris said yes, you can run that template for a selection of students. As far as how you upload it to PIMS, then maybe you're going to put them all together, but yes, you could do that. I have a response from someone. I would not recommend uploading assessments separately in PIMS. And Laura, I don't know if you were on the Data Quality Network call the other day, but they talked about using the sandbox. So I know you clarified that your question was related to PowerSchool. So the answer to that question, to that piece of the question, is yes, you can do it that way. Someone asked about exporting the DCID and student name if you don't have PowerSchool version 8. I replied that there is no way to do that. Am I correct in that, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
So
the latest version of PowerSchool that you need to be on to see the assessment data, so if you're on your server, in your PowerSchool server, and you don't see that page, there was a release on Friday, like Chris said, the 19th. It's version 14.9.1, I think it is.
That's right.
So in order to see the assessment data, you have to be, it's not related to the version of PowerSchool. The last version of PowerSchool that was released was 8.0.2, and if you have that version but have not updated your state reporting version, you may have a lower version of the state reporting update that does not have the new fields that Chris has covered, and your server needs to be updated to that latest release in order to see that.
Yeah.
Let me just check.
And then there'll be another release. So this is what's happened this month. On the 12th, we had compliance had what we call our major release of each month. It's always on the second Friday of every month. Then on the 19th, we actually asked management for an escalation release. So the 19th was what we call an escalation release. Then the 26th is what we call our minor release, and that happens usually the 2 Fridays after a major release. So depending on how fast we need to get stuff out to everybody, we'll often use a minor release along with a major release of the month. What's happened this month is we've also released on the 19th. So we're using everything that we can this month to get everything out to you, to all of you, that you need for these upcoming submissions.
And I see about 5 people who have their hands raised. So
okay.
And I do want to mention, if it wasn't mentioned earlier, and I think it was, that this is being recorded. So you will have access to the presentation, to Chris's presentation after this call, so that you can review the process that she went over on the data import export and import process to get those. And someone mentioned that they're running the template, but it's failing. So I haven't had a chance to try the template. I don't know.
I don't think it's failing, but if any problems that you have at all, please let Cheryl know if you're part of the IU,
Okay.
so that she can get a hold of me. You know, because we didn't have time to have the focus group do beta testing on it, but I did get an email from another focus group member this morning, and she said that it's working okay. She just had one question about something. So one of the things that I wanted to also point out before I show the importing is the differences in the report. So I didn't get to cover that, so let me just go show that really quickly. On your state reporting page, we actually rewrote entirely the school template, the student template, sorry. And I'm glad we did. We debated, and again, it's about the coding and the report and using database extensions and all that. So right now, you've got this student template extract up here under the PIMS data extracts new, and that is written in SRP format, and that is written for this school year for October 1, this first submission. It has all the correct columns. Remember, they added a bunch of columns on to this report. So when you go and you look at the PIMS manual, instead of 202, there's like 217. So I started looking at the calendar and got sick to my stomach basically last week at the beginning of the week, going, oh no, we rewrote the report. Now what are they going to run for 13-14? Well, I'm really glad that we didn't just update the reporting engine format of this report, because now you can use it for your 13-14 data, which you also have to report on October 1st. So October 1st, you have to submit the student template looking back at last year, and you also have to submit the template for October 1 collection. So you're going to use this one here, the reporting engine version 4.9, which has the right number of columns and all of that in it, and then for your 14-15 data, you're going to use this new one that we've written in SRP format. Okay, and I did put a note about that in the release notes as well. Just print those release notes out and just pay attention to everything that they're saying, that I've tried to get communicated to everybody in the release notes. So 2 versions of the student template extract, one that you're going to use for data for last year. It's got the right number of columns in it. And then the new one that has all the new, that's updated to the new format for the report for this year is version 1. I think it's 1. Yeah, it's just 1 right now. Okay?
Okay. There was a question about incident management and log entries, and I just want to reemphasize that incident management is what's being supported by Pearson and state reporting this year, beginning this year. Log entries still will work. However, if there's any changes or something gets broken with any of those state reporting reports through log entries, they will not be supported or fixed by Pearson. So the state has said they're not going to make any changes to those reports at this point, so you can take your chances, but there's a possibility that at some point you may be forced to move over to incident management.
And we are, we had to kind of put that project, I mean, the reports are there. There are some, we updated the setup for incident management. So if you've taken any releases since in the last couple of months, then you did get that update for incident management for the setup portion of it. There are reports that need to be updated because of the update to the setup portion of incident management, as well as there are some additional reports that we need to write. That kind of got put on hold for a couple of months, but we'll be working on that again starting in November. And we did add a query that's really, really cool, a way to query your incident management, student incidents that wasn't there before, a customization, and we're working on some other things to go along with incident management to help you. So that is what we're supporting, and the reports will all be functioning in time for you to submit them. I know there's some other reports that we didn't even have rewritten. I think one the location fact, and that will be rewritten to look at incident management data. So.
Okay. I think that was, let me just double check, I think.
Do you want
For
me to?
incident management, is there a report to report the aggregate out of school suspensions? That's a question from Byron.
School, like for academic code of conduct, that aggregate data?
I guess that's what yes, the report that was in the location fact. So the only thing you can do right now is actually the location fact template, that's not in incident management yet, right, Chris?
That's right. We're rewriting that. It will be rewritten this year, and also the discipline summary.
Okay.
So those reports that I know many people depend on. So if you're using incident management, you can create incidents for academic and code of conduct, and the location fact will look at that data.
Are these and I'm thinking no, but I just want to make sure I remember correctly, is that this is not in database extensions, right, the incident management?
No.
So you can't just do a database export. I guess you could work in...
No, you can.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was thinking,
right.
You know what I mean.
So in the past, you could not see these tables or fields anywhere in PowerSchool. Right. Now with page and data management or database extension, you can see all the tables and fields for
incident management. That's right. That's right. So you could export the stuff out, Byron, and then do some kind of a total in Excel. You're looking for aggregate data. So you could export the data out through the page and data export manager into an Excel spreadsheet and do, some kind of total, sort it and total it. For now.
Yeah.
Oh, but you couldn't see it before, but now you can.
Now you can.
Yes.
Now you have all of these fields. Again, it's incidents, and people always think of incidents as student data, and it's not. It's incident data, so just keep that in mind, okay?
Right.
That is why we created the query, so that you can actually run the query and then have those students in your selection and then go export data out if you want for them, or do whatever you want. Do the letters, suspension, expulsion letters. That we're working on that as well. You can use ReportWorks, but it's not, the functionality that some people wish that they could do for your suspension and expulsion letters. So we're looking into that, and we might actually even provide reports for those letters. All of that kind of got put on hold while we addressed all of this new stuff that the state came out with for these other submissions. So,
the only other comment there is a question about Pearson hosted servers. Then they don't know when they're getting updated. My suggestion would be to put a ticket in with Pearson to update your server as soon as possible, due to the requirements of your state reporting having to be, you have such a small window to update the data. So, yeah, so I guess you could go over the import again.
Okay. So first of all, what you need to do is you need to figure out the best way to get your students in their current selection, the students that you want to populate this data for, because you're going to need all of your students' DCIDs. And the only way to get a DCID is by going to DDE, exporting out those students, and then checking the little flag that's on that page. So I was just going to sections. I mean, there's a lot of different ways and searches, whatever, you might have. So, for example, biology, I could just click these 18 students or this, 15 students. I'm going to do that. I actually think I already imported in some students for biology, but we'll see what happens here. So I'm going to make these students my current selection, and then I'm going to go to System, DDE, and there they are in my current selection. I'm going to click on Export Records, and I'm just exporting out their last first name and their DC ID. You can export out whatever you want. You could do grade level. That might be important because some of these fields that you're populating are all about the grade level, that the student's in. So run that and then get this data, and this actually becomes the beginning of my template. So right here, I have this field DCID, and I have the student's last name. When you get to the mapping page, it's just like when you import in using DDE or DDA. It's the same thing. It's if it doesn't map, you can map it. So, don't worry about you have to have it on your spreadsheet. You don't necessarily have to have it on as a header on your spreadsheet. You just have to know what to map it to. So now what I'm going to do is get my template, which is right here. I'll bring it back over. Right here. And this is the student, this field right here, S_PA_student_assessments_C. You'll notice that the headers aren't just the field name, it's the table and the field name. Okay, to map correctly, that's what you have to have. So I'm going to put that in here. And then this was for biology. So I am going to put this one, spring biology. And then there were two more fields that are required, and you'll see them. They're marked off here under this row, required. You'll see what else is required. And that would be the assessment, the participation code, and the year ID. So I'm just going to copy both of those, put those in here. Now, obviously, I could have more than just biology on here. If I knew that these students were doing spring algebra and spring literature and biology, I could have all of that on here if I had that information. So then you're just going to populate this with the 1, checks off the box, and this participation code, whatever it should be, I'm going to put an I. And then your year ID, for I think probably this year it's 24. I don't have that year built on my server, so I'm going to put 23. And then you're just going to save this as text tab delimited. I always like to save everything to my desktop. That's why it probably looks like a mess. Okay, let's close this one. Okay, so then I'm going to go to Data Manager. And as I did before, there's actually 2 ways to get to it. You can go to Special Functions, Importing and Exporting, and you'll notice the minute that you go to Importing and Exporting, you get Data Import Manager and you get Data Export Manager. So they're there as well. And when you click on those, you'll notice in the breadcrumb it actually says Page and Data Management. So you're actually on that page, the Page and Data Management page. Browse for your folder, which I think I called version 2. And then you're going to pick the table that you're importing it into, which is the Assessment Child table. Click on Next. And make sure that your fields are all mapping. And like I said, if you just left DCID on your spreadsheet, that's fine. As long as you know what you want to map things to, you don't necessarily have to have everything exactly perfect on your import template. and then next. And then I have check to exclude first row, and I have if the record in the import file matches an existing record in the database, how would you like that record to be processed? And I have do not process right now. Once we get the constraint on there, that will work like we want it to. Right now, it's not exactly working like we would like it to work. So I'm going to click on import. And who knows, I might have already done these 15 students before we might get, oh, we have 5 failed and the rest imported. You can actually download these failed records. I've never tried that. I don't know what exactly you get with that. Oh, so you get the kids, you can see the ones that failed. And they failed because they already had data. Don't be too scared, just like importing before, just more to think about right now. Once you get used to it,
I think that's just the thing. You know, it's unknown. It's people. This is the first time that a lot of people, unfortunately, the people that are going to have to deal with it have seen it. Right. Maybe just because of the roles that they're playing at their districts, and it is a little scary for something. So, right. I can. Maybe they, just export out a couple records, try it with a couple students, get comfortable with it, and then, grab a bigger group.
Right.
Practice is the only way, like you said, Chris. It's something that we're all going to get familiar with, whether we want to or not.
It's going to be eventually the new way because
right.
I think we analyzed Pennsylvania. You have a lot of virtual tables. You have over 1,000 fields in the virtual tables, and how we migrate those is we're not certain of actually how that actually is going to work. So, and then your other fields, I think you have over 500 or something like that custom fields for state reporting only. So once we start migrating, this will become home to all of you that are used to using importing and exporting as a way to get your data populated quickly.
Okay. As far as the questions in the question window, I think we've either talked about them or answered them. I've typed in the answers. Any question that was brought up, I did try to bring it up and mention it. So some we may have just talked about, others we did both. So, but I think I just want to mention that I have districts on this call here that have responded that they have run the report successfully, and we at the IU here have successfully imported some information. So as far as I know right now, the report itself, the student template, seems to be pulling the data.
That's good.
I would just mention that if you're having a fail, try restarting ReportWorks. And that may be the problem. I did have somebody mention that it failed the first time, but then Margie actually said she restarted ReportWorks and it fixed the issue. So it may just be an issue with ReportWorks if it fails.
Just, for any of you, don't hesitate on making a case. If you see any kind of issues at all, let us know so that we can get right on it, because even though this first submission is this next week, basically a week from today, and then later on, the first week in October, it is due again really soon. You have another snapshot coming up, and you have another submission, in November and December. So we want to make sure that everything's working correctly.
Okay. I just want to thank Chris again for, first of all, agreeing to help everyone out this morning by showing and doing this demo. She's been, I can't say enough about how hard she and her team have been working. I know it all seems, we're all overwhelmed with everything, and we are living in Pennsylvania. Imagine, Chris has to work with several different states and all the stuff that their team has to work. So I do want to thank you again, Chris, for you and everything you and your team does to help us in Pennsylvania. It's not an easy task.
I don't think my developers are on this call. I didn't invite them to this,
Well,
but I have to give a shout out to them because, you know, I read the requirements and I say, okay, you guys, this is what I need, and they come up with design and all the good ideas and everything, and I just have a really, really good team that, you know, they just get right on it and go, no problem, we're going to work on this, and they've been putting in some extra hours to get this stuff done, and I forgot to mention that on the focus group call because they do attend that, but I told them afterwards. I said, oh my gosh, you guys, you're doing great. So
yeah,
there's a lot behind. Sometimes it just looks like an easy little page, you know, that shouldn't be so hard, but then it ends up being a little bit more difficult than we think it's going to be. So.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I know it's early where you are, so
no
thank
problem.
you. You did a great job. I think it's very helpful for everyone. Dave, I guess you can take over. I'm not sure what we're doing next.
Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, I didn't have anything else. We still had a couple hands raised. I'm not sure if we wanted to go over that or if they were in reference still to the questions earlier. She needed to repeat what she mentioned. If you have any questions, go ahead and, at this point, just go ahead and put them in the questions section and we'll get back to you. The video, today's session has been recorded and it will be posted on ps-solutions.org later today, along with this Q&As, any questions that were posted and were given a public reply. That will also be posted on the site. There will be a PowerSchool user group option you can select and can grab both files. That's all I have. Linda, did you want to finish it up?
Sure. Thanks everyone for being with us today. We had a very good presentation by Shannon Crawford, School Messenger. Contact us if you need her contact information. And we also had an excellent overview by Chris Wilkinson, the state reporting guru that we so heavily rely on. So thanks, Cheryl, for your input as well. You are also the master of state reporting as far as I'm concerned. And thanks for your team, Dave, there at Capital Area IU producing this for us today. So with that, we're going to sign off. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.